We'll call to order the March 19th business meeting of the District County Board of Education. Call the roll, please.
Bill White.
Here.
Julia Beckman.
Here.
Deb Boyle.
Here.
Mike Davenport.
Here.
Nancy Kupka.
Here.
Terry Pavlik.
Here.
Quorum has been established. At this time, we will rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving down our agenda, the next item this evening is the approval of minutes. We have February 27th, both regular and closed sessions, March 8th, regular and closed sessions, March 14th, special meeting, and a March 14th closed session meeting. Any comments, corrections to any of the minutes? If the chair hears none, I'd invite a motion to approve the minutes, A through F, as I recited.
So moved.
Howard Pavlich moves that these minutes be approved. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay. Larry Kupka seconds. Call the vote, please.
Terry Pavlik.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye, that motion carries. The minutes are approved. The next item on our agenda is our first reception of visitors. Anybody wish to address the board this evening on an item on our agenda? I think I recognize everybody in the room. Okay, we'll move past that item. We'll move now to item 6, recommendations and reports of the superintendent. The first item is it's all about learning the Common Core curriculum. I see the slideshow set up on the screen already. Dr. McDonald, can you take us forward on that?
Thank you, Mr. White. We've talked to the board several times previously. Our district, like the other school districts in Illinois, is moving forward with a concept called the Common Core Standards Curriculum. And the group that has truly made the most progress in the district is the math department from North and South High School. And they've done a very impressive job working together and thinking at a different level and collaborating. And in addition, collaborating with the elementary school districts in the community. And so Dr. Miner and I asked Mr. Heldman and Mr. Stevenson if they could come and give the board a brief presentation tonight. It'll not replicate the 2-hour program they gave us in January. I was thinking more like 10 minutes or so. So Dr. Miner and Mr. Stevenson, thank you for coming tonight. You're on.
Thank you. As Dr. McDonald had said, this is a very much condensed version that we are duplicating using with permission from the DuPage County Regional Office of Education. But this could be a much longer presentation. We are not going to talk about the English language arts piece, which is also part of the Common Core, because we want to highlight math at this point, but there's more to come with the English language arts. The foundational piece in where Common Core evolved is basically related to the idea of college and career readiness. And this is something that had been proposed through the state governors as well as the state superintendents as to how we can get our students so that they are college and career ready, so when they start in college, it is without remediation. They do not have to go and take the extra courses where they pay money, it doesn't show on their college transcripts, that they are ready to jump into a college-ready a course of study. This is not the same, though, as college eligibility. The key to that, though, is the rigor. And that's what the Common Core state standards focus on. To think critically, persuasively, to take initiative, and to demonstrate persistence. Not once did I say bubble in a checklist. It is how students are taught to think, which relates to the 21st thinking and learning and working goals that we all engage in as members of the workforce. What we know about Common Core state standards, see the red words highlighted there, sea change. I would call it a watershed moment. It truly is a different way of thinking and learning that is upon us in the upcoming years related to the Common Core state standards. It mandates that student learning for every grade level at a mastery level. We're not saying it's okay that some kids do well, some kids don't, some kids, oh well, we'll just pass along. We expect mastery according to a standard. It also forces a common language for all teachers. which allows a lot of resources across states now that teachers can access, math teachers and English teachers, because we're all teaching to the same Common Core standards. There's instructional effectiveness that will be measured based on the standards. That's a whole separate presentation as to what the assessments are going to look like. They are currently under development, but they are going to be strikingly different than simply bubbling in a Scantron sheet. It has to do with collaborative working together, and there's so many different versions that are being posed. So that's a follow-up presentation to the board once PARC comes out with their determination. As I noted, we're talking about math today, but English Language Arts Common Core standards have also come out. More subject area standards are also going to be brought. Science is very close to having it evolve. Social studies, they're still talking. But again, this will be a determination by which students will be graded according to a standard. At this point, I'm just going to let you see some of the instructional shifts. You see English Language Arts is up there. Those are the 6 new shifts that will take place. We'll talk about that at a different time, but at this point, I want to pass it over to my colleague who knows very much about the Math Common Core standards, and he'll be able to fill you in as to what this means for our students in District 99.
Thank you. I'm Paul Stevenson, the Math Department Chair at South High School. I'm here representing myself and John Heldman, who've been working very closely together throughout the whole change relative to the Common Core in mathematics. We engaged with this very early in the fall of 2010, which was shortly after the standards came out and were adopted by the state of Illinois. And we had previously previewed and looked through them, and then we got seriously engaged with what the changes were going to occur in our individual curriculums. As Dr. Miner pointed out, the target where this all started was college and career readiness, so that's sort of the foundation, and that was the initial impetus behind the changes in the Common Core state standards in mathematics. Problem solving and communication are emphasized throughout, as well as mathematical practices, and I'll talk a little bit more about those later. The mathematical practices are from grades K through 12. There's a series of 8 of them that you'll see in a moment. What we realized very early on as we looked at these is that there were 2 parts to it. There was the standards for practice, which talks about how you teach and how students learn mathematics, and there were the standards for content. And our initial investigation and most of our initial work have been with the standards for practice, because that's something that we can change in the classroom currently, whereas the standards for content is something that's going to have to take time down the road. These are the 8 standards for mathematical practice, and these 8 standards, as I said, apply grades K through 12. It's the exact same in grade 1 as it is in grade 11. Talking about making sense of problems and persevere in solving them, to reason abstractly and quantitatively, to construct viable arguments, not vile ones, hopefully not that, and critique the reasoning of others, to be able to model with mathematics. And that modeling with mathematics cuts across all other areas of math. To use appropriate tools strategically, obviously in the 21st century we have a wide range of tools that we did not have previously. Attending to precision, sometimes when people see that, they think about, well, how many digits do I round answers to? And it's much more than that. It is precision in language. It's replacing words like, well, you plug in the number with, well, you substitute in a number, using precise terminology to cut down on confusion and misunderstandings. Looking for and making use of structure, and then expressing regularity. So those are the 8 mathematical practices that we're talking about. The differences in the high school curriculum, as again Dr. Miner pointed out, this is not just ACT, it is very different from that. Talking about heavy emphasis on functions and on applications, understanding mathematical principles and not rote processes, trying to really get away from that idea of here is a particular skill that you use to do this kind of problem, but it doesn't apply anywhere else, and teaching deep understanding of mathematics that they can apply in a wide variety of areas. Sorry, one other thing on here. In terms of how the content is going to change, there's going to be significant changes in grade school as well. A lot of the content is being pushed down in grades. Some of the work with fractions occurs earlier. The algebra and geometry piece, actually a lot of that is occurring in grades 6, 7, and 8, as well as some of the work in statistics that previously would be like an AP level statistics course. Some of those statistical analyses are being pushed down into grade 8 as well as freshman, sophomore year. So there's significant content changes that we are looking at as well. In terms of the high school pathways, there are 2 different pathways that Park is planning on, and we have yet to determine in the state of Illinois which pathway we are going to take. The Illinois State Board of Ed is sort of pushing that decision off. The traditional pathway is what people think of as algebra, geometry, algebra 2, what we have always done. The integrated pathway is 3 courses, Math 1, Math 2, Math 3, something along those lines. As John and I have looked and dug into the content in great detail, we realize that no matter what you call it, the courses are going to be integrated to a certain extent because we're talking about algebra and geometry and statistics being pushed down in grades 6, 7, and 8. So we don't have a full year algebra course anymore. We won't have a full year geometry course. So even if we stick with the name algebra, it's not going to be algebra as everyone is used to that. So we are anticipating changing the names because we're figuring it's going to be new, and we want to show that it's going to be something new and not have anyone confused that this is business as usual. The other thing about this is there is a compacted version. In the past, the way our feeder schools have accelerated students is by skipping a grade, or in some cases 2 grades. They might skip grade 7 math or grade 6, 7 math and get ahead that way. That's no longer possible with Common Core. There is significant amounts of mathematics that occurs in every grade. And so as a result of that, they have to make changes if they're going to advance students. The only way they can do that is by compacting curriculum. And the documents include a couple of options for doing that. One such thing would be perhaps in grade 7 to complete grade 7 and 8 math. So then in 8th grade, they could do the first year of what would typically be the high school math curriculum. In our discussions with District 58, we've talked about several different options with them as well. We have yet to see exactly how that's going to play out, but that's what we're talking about there. That was from the 2-hour presentation that we did back in January. Although our part, Dr. Mandano, was not 2 hours. We were half an hour, I think. So in terms of District 99, here's what we're looking at. It's a definite change from our content curriculum. There are going to be significant content changes as well as these changes of mathematical practice. Fewer topics. One of the things that the Common Core touts is that American mathematics education is described as a mile wide and an inch deep. And that's not the way it is in other countries and other cultures. It's much more in-depth. And so they are taking the content and they are cutting down the number of topics that we have to cover every year and allowing us to go deeper into those and teach for more understanding. That's something that as math teachers we've actually wanted to do for a long time, but our hands have been tied to some extent because of testing, honestly. And so this test is going to allow us the freedom to do what we really feel is the right thing for students in the long run. In K through 8, they're grade-specific standards. In the high school, it's more of a strand perspective. And as I said earlier, the difference between content and practice. And when you talk to anyone about mathematics, you'll hear a lot of that, content versus practice. As a result, as I mentioned earlier, you will probably be seeing course title changes. Much of the high school algebra and geometry curriculum will be in grades 6 through 8. Statistics will now be in grades 9, 10, and 11, and actually some of it goes down into grade 8. The content and pedagogical changes, so we're going to change content as well as how we teach it. And then one of the other things that we're looking at is for putting more students at the 300 at the core level, because there is not a Common Core Standards Light. And so we are going to, for the most part, push most of our students into the 300. However, there are going to have to be some structural changes to make that a feasible opportunity for those students. They need to be supported if they're going to be going through the same curriculum that everyone else is going through. Currently, and actually this goes back through most of last year, John and I have been working with the departments in both buildings in math to familiarize the teachers with the content standards to some extent, but much more specifically with the practice standards. And we have been asking them to start implementing those changes in their classroom as much as they possibly can, given the constraints of the curriculum that they're working under. But as I go in and do observations now, I am seeing those changes coming into fruition in the classroom, and they look different than they did a year ago because teachers have been paying attention to that change in mathematical practice. The curriculum, the way we have it lined out is that in 2013-14 we will introduce Common Core Math 1 for the high school level, and then the following year will be Common Core Math 2, and then the following year will be Common Core Math 3. So we see introducing one new course each year, as opposed to flipping a switch and trying to have everybody switch at one point where we're in the middle, that we think is not a good way to go. So we're going to introduce it 1 year at a time. And then I just want to briefly touch on the associated districts. John and I have been working very closely. District 58 was kind enough to invite us to join their curriculum work, and so we have been meeting with them for the last year and a half, really, trying to help them through in the advisory role and to try to make the transition from 8th grade to high school as smooth as possible. And that has been going fairly well. District 58 is planning to throw the switch in grades K through 8 next year. So all K through 8, District 58 next year will be Common Core. They have adopted textbooks, they have a curriculum in place, they are ready to roll in grades K through 8. Other feeder schools we have talked to, we have made overtures to, we have not gotten specific feedback from a number of them, and so we're not exactly sure where they're going to be at, or we know in very broad terms what they're telling us is going to happen, but we have not had any type of relationship with those like we have with District 58, where we know exactly where they're at. And in some cases, they're asking us. They're saying, you know, what are you guys going to be doing? Well, I can tell you what we're going to do in high school, but I can't tell you, you know, what's going to happen in grade 8. That's something you're going to have to determine. Now, we can help try and make those determinations. Having everyone on the same page is obviously a highly desirable thing, and you know, hopefully even before the year is out, we'd like to see if we can convene a group of the feeder schools and talk about how everyone is planning to make changes next year, so that the following year when they get to high school as freshmen, the transition will be as easy as possible. And then again, this is just sort of a summary of the key advances that Common Core has.
Just one piece I'd like to add is that not only have John and Paul really projected a 4-year plan for the district, but they're also being tapped not only by local districts, but also the Regional Office of Education recognized the expertise that they have and have been tapping them as well. So they're showing us a great footprint for how to go forward in the future.
Thank you for your time.
Thanks.
Are there any questions?
I had a curiosity question. If they're going to begin introducing new methods, right, in our math classes next year, can you give me just a short example of how that would work within the traditional curriculum? I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, well, one of the things that we were talking about is the persistence, for example. So
Yeah.
instead of asking a very straightforward question with a simple answer, you would give a problem which is not nearly so straightforward that students have to work on for 5 or 10 minutes.
Oh, I see.
So it's something where maybe you're doing that as a warm-up at the beginning of a class, instead of saying, here's 5 review questions from what I taught last week, here's a problem to struggle with. And I actually did an observation in algebra class just a week ago, and it was 2 pattern problems. And one of them was a very straightforward pattern, and the other one was not at all straightforward. As a matter of fact, I could not figure out the pattern. And the students in that class worked on that problem for 10 or 12 minutes. Now, if that had been given to them at the very beginning of the year, they would have quit after 2 or 3 minutes. It was, I have no idea what to do. But because the teacher's been working with them and teaching them all year long about persistence, for 12 minutes, those kids were trying different things, trying to come up with an idea for what's the pattern that's going on here. And one of the kids eventually got there. That's the sort of thing that we're talking about changing.
It's very interesting, thank you.
I have a question. If we switch to, Common Core 1 at the freshman level, is there any concern there could be a gap between what the 8th graders know and then, and what do you do to fill in, if students arrive, and there's a gap?
Absolutely. That's definitely going to happen because of the fact that we know that our feeder schools are going to be at very different places as well. And because content is being pushed down, whenever you make that change, there's going to be bigger gaps. For a student going from grade 5 to grade 6 who hasn't had grade 5 Common Core math is now expected to do grade 6 Common Core math. So there's going to be a very interesting period of transition. And John and I are trying to, adjust for that. We know that the first couple of years through, it's going to be really rough, trying to find out where kids are at. But the positive thing that we see is because the amount of content is less, that is going to free us up a little bit in terms of time, which is a luxury we really haven't ever had. And so we're hoping that by having some extra time, at least initially, we may not be able to go quite as deep as we'd like to do, but we'll have the opportunity to fill in some of those gaps as we go through the year.
It does seem that the issue will be between 8th grade and freshman year, because if you introduce Common Core 1, Common Core 2, Common Core 3 sequentially, the students taking Common Core 2 will those who finish Common Core 1. Right. And those who are Common Core 3 finish, so there won't be that gap there.
No, absolutely, you're right. It is the transition from 8th grade to freshman year that we're most concerned about.
Well, I'm sure the answer is yes, but I would anticipate that you are looking to allocate tutoring resources and extra help so that the freshmen who come in who might have a gap can get caught up. I knew the answer would be yes.
We're actually piloting a program next year for helping students, and so that is sort of giving us some experience with scheduling and seeing what that's like, and then we will probably be expanding that the following year as well. Okay. Absolutely.
And actually, that accounts for some of the additional FTE for mathematics that we included in our proposal. We are recognizing the fact that we will have to put additional resources into mathematics in the near term in order to support the transition. And as Paul talked about, we're going to have more kids that perhaps in the past would have been in a slower remedial mathematics course are not going to be in the core courses, and we have to support them so they can get through those courses differently than perhaps we would have in the past.
How will we assess that we're getting the students at the right level, going from where we are now to this new Common Core?
Do you mean in the right level as far as
getting them into the right class?
I think
Is that student capability?
the recommendation process will probably still remain largely the same, so we're going to rely heavily, as we have in the past, on our 8th grade teachers' recommendations. Obviously, we'll look at Explore data and things like that as well, which has been part of the recommendation process. There is going to be a period of transition. One of the things that we're talking about that we're piloting next year is the idea of a flexible support structure, so that if a student is in a class and is struggling, they have an opportunity to be assigned to a separate resource center for mathematics only that's staffed by a math teacher, not the walk-in math resource center, but a specific, you will go here during 4A and get help on mathematics until you are back up to speed. So what we're hoping is that will give us a little more experience with what that looks like, so that then when Common Core Math 1 comes in, we have that flexibility for students that, okay, yeah, you've got some gaps, here's a place where you can go and get the support that you need to fill those gaps in.
And also, correct me if I'm wrong, Paul, but there aren't really a lot of choices. Most students are going to be in Common Core Math.
Yeah.
A handful, perhaps, are going to be in some sort of remedial mathematics simply because they're so far behind, but we're talking less than 1%. And then we'll have the group that's accelerated now, accelerated in this curriculum as well, but probably not. The acceleration will be different simply because a larger part of the curriculum that is going to be pushed down a year, so to speak.
Yeah, and the acceleration piece with District 58, they currently have a significant number of students that are accelerated 2 years, who are doing basically geometry in 8th grade. Jefferson also has a small population of students that are doing that. And District 58 basically has said they're not going to do that any longer, except for maybe a very, very small group of students. And so, because they're just trying to get a kid through 3 years of math in one, how are you going to do that? And so there's going to be some significant changes.
Well, you're answering some questions for me. I've got a daughter that's going to start 7th grade next year.
Oh, don't ask
And
me.
then-
7th grade for next year is
and then-
really bad.
And then,
I already got my first parent phone call about that today.
It might have been from Mike.
I also have a son that's starting at South next year. So if I'm understanding right, the way we're rolling this thing out, he'll never be affected by
Will not be
this.
affected at all.
Because he's
freshman
just ahead of
class,
the wave.
Yeah, that comes in 13, 14, they will start Common Core Math 1, and as they progress through, they
So you
will
won't slip
christen
people
each
in.
course as they go through the sequence.
Interesting.
Now, what would be the expectation for senior year in math?
It would be pre-calculus. So, pretty much like it is for a student who starts in algebra, there's algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and then pre-calculus. So they would do Common Core 1, 2, 3, and then pre-calculus, although we will have, we have a discrete math option for students that are not as successful and are not really needing the rigor of a pre-calculus class. That will still be an option. And we're also looking at a possible other senior level course. We've been doing a lot of articulation with COD, a quantitative literacy course, that kind of a thing for someone who's not going to go into math and science, but is going to be hopefully ready to walk into a COD and take math there that's not calculus-based mathematics.
And you'd also have the AP courses as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so the expectation would be approximately the same number of students would be taking calculus in high school as are now? Would that be more? Fewer?
I would say, I would expect there to be a little bit of a decrease, because I think less students are going to be advanced in the elementary and in the junior highs essentially. So there very possibly will be a decrease in the number of students taking the AP level.
Any other questions?
Very interesting, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I guess item 6B now is freedom of information requests.
Mr. Wright, we had one Freedom of Information request over the last month. Mr. Stalen fulfilled that request.
Okay, we move to item 7, the consent agenda. Items A, B, and C on the consent agenda. The chair invites a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Member Pavasich moves. Do we have a second?
Second.
Member Davenport seconds. Take a roll call on the consent agenda.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Mike Davenport,
Aye.
Nancy Kupka. Aye. Julia Beckman,
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye, that motion carries. The consent agenda has been approved. Item 8 is recommendations for action. 8A, resolution authorizing notice of dismissal to non-tenured teachers. Dr. McDonald, do you want to give us an overview, or?
Actually, the board reviewed, this is a list of non-tenured staff members we are releasing based on the fact that they were part-time. Or we are not certain that we have a position for them for the next school year. So as a matter of policy or practice, I should say, we are releasing them. Many of these persons will likely be hired back in some capacity in the district.
And we did discuss this in closed session. Unless there otherwise, the chair would invite a motion with respect to this resolution.
So moved.
Member Kupka moves the resolution authorizing notice of dismissal to non-tenured teachers other than for final year probationary teachers. Is there a second?
Second.
Member Beckman seconds. Call that vote, please.
Excuse me, Nancy Kupka. Aye. Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich,
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye, that motion carries. That resolution has been passed. Item 8B, approval of recommended student fees for 2012-2013. Do a presentation on this, Dr. McDonald, a brief one, or?
I'll be glad to start, and Mr. Stalen can fill in. The board has discussed student fees now for several meetings since the beginning of the calendar year. We are aware that there's some sentiment, if possible, to reduce our fees. At this point in time, however, our recommendation is to leave our fees static, to not change any of our fees. Rationale being that we do have some concerns about our revenue stream at the state and federal level. and our insurance income is quite low at this time. So this is, in fact, we do glean about $1.7 million out of student fees each year. This is not a trivial revenue stream. And we are concerned about reducing that, as it is one revenue stream that we do control. I know the board has seen information from other school districts that Mr. Stalen has prepared. Our fees do not seem out of whack in the county. There are some that charge more, some that charge less. However, our recommendation given is frankly to leave those as they are, and we understand there's likely to be a board discussion about that.
Okay. Well, at this point, the administration's recommendation is to continue fees next year at the same level. Are there any informational questions before there's a motion on this matter? If there aren't any, if we think we've discussed it and want to go into deliberation, I would then invite a motion.
So moved.
So moved which way? To approve the fees as...
I'm sorry, to approve the fees as presented.
Okay, Member Kupka moves to approve the fees as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
Member Beckman seconds. Discussion. Anybody wish to weigh in on this?
I will.
Please, go ahead.
As I stated previously, I think that we should start moving towards a gradual reduction. And my understanding is that, based on information previously provided, that for every $5 that is reduced in registration fee, we'd be looking at a reduction based on past years. Excuse me, I'm battling a cold. Of $20,800 would be the reduction in funds that would occur as a result of a $5 reduction. And so I would urge that we might do something minor that way, with the idea that this is a trend that we can start going forward, looking at a gradual reduction. I know that we've been doing a lot of great things with some of the energy efficiency things that we've implemented. As well, we've had a wonderful warm spring, and so are not using as much natural gas as I suspect we had planned on. So given that something as small as $5 would not impact revenue in any great way, but would start a trend in the right way, I'd encourage that we might consider that.
Anybody else wish to address this topic?
I would just add, I certainly understand the sentiment that Mr. Davenport is expressing, and I would love it if we could just keep that going, and as I think it's in the presentation, it'd be great if we didn't have to charge any fees. And I think as a token, it might be a nice token, but I'm not sure that families would really notice it any more than they will notice that they've been frozen for another year. And we just heard a wonderful presentation on the direction we are going with core math standards. We know we're having to add services for that. We know we're going to have to go with English within the same time frame or very soon. There's just so many variables that I'd rather we just stay stable right now and maybe address some of those concerns and a reduction, which would be great, when we know that we have a stable revenue stream from the state, or when we know exactly what's expected of us in terms of core standards.
Any other discussion? We have a motion in a second. Any other discussion before we ask for a vote? Anyone
Call
have
the
any?
question.
Anybody else going once, going twice? Okay, we'll call the vote, please.
Nancy Kupka. Aye. Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Nay.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye, the motion carries, and the fees are approved for next year. Item 8C, approval of capital improvement construction contract awards.
Mr. Shaw, can you brief the board briefly or quickly on the several contracts?
The four proposals in front of you were presented to the board last fall as part of our capital improvement year. And those were extracted from our long-range plan. As aggregate, these four came in under budget. The pool locker, these are all projects at North High School, and you'll recall we had a project at South High School bid last month, and we've got some more coming up in the next couple months, but these just happen to be all north. Pool locker room HVAC replacement. It's rotted out. It's bad environment with the moist air, and it's not functional. TV radio studio HVAC replacement. in corner of the 1928, 1936 wing is very old and in need of replacement. Bleacher replacements are the balconies of the competition gym and the balcony and floor of the pool building. And then also at North High School is the pool locker room, locker replacements. Again, pretty tough environment for metal products, so we're going with a phenolic plastic
Good.
locker.
Cool.
So we would recommend that these four, which in the aggregate are below our budget, be approved.
Okay, as before, any informational questions before we ask for a motion? Hearing none, the chair would invite a motion to approve the capital improvement projects as presented.
So moved? Ooh, that was a
Mike
tie.
Davenport moves, member Pavlich seconds. That's the time. Okay, any discussion on this? Twice, call that vote, please.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julie Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka. Aye. Bill White.
Aye, that motion carries. The approval of capital improvement projects, that's been awarded. Next item is 8D, approval of synthetic fields at North High School.
Well, Mr. White, as the board is aware that in the initial master site plan that we had planned as in terms of the second phase of the project, meaning the phase that was not funded by the $14.8 million we received in 2010, that we had envisioned installing a second artificial surface at North High. That was not part of the plan we initially submitted in January of 2011, but as we have gone through this project and looked at the utility of that field, and especially in relation to the space at North High, and given the fact that when the new county stormwater ordinance hopefully passes, that artificial surface will be much less expensive than we initially thought, because the underground water detention is much less than we originally thought. The value of the utility of the field in terms of the programs that can remain on the campus, the constant use of the field in different weather conditions, so on and so forth, our opinion has changed to recommending this as part of the first phase of the project. One of the advantages of an artificial surface versus a traditional grass field is that it's flat, because the water drains right through it. Because it's flat, we can not only use it for soccer and physical education, we could also use it for softball, and that second softball field has been kind of the conundrum. The first one is being constructed now, or it is constructed now and should be in use shortly, but we had looked at many different opportunities for that second field on the campus, and the opportunity to actually construct that or install or put the lines in for the second field on the artificial surface was something we had not considered in the past, and that would really allow us to bring those programs completely back on the North High campus, which saves us maybe easily tens of thousands of dollars each year on transportation, supervision costs, and so forth. So at this point, our recommendation is that the board would in fact install that second field on the campus at North High. Marty, anything that I didn't cover?
I think I would also add that a synthetic field, because it can dry so quickly, is available for use at least 4 times more than a natural grass field.
Absolutely.
And because we're so short of fields at North High School, this really benefits PE and athletics. And financially, it offsets the costs of, as Dr. McDonald said, the under drain system, stormwater management system, but also if you extract out the costs of the field and the potential to have to build a fourth field, renovate a fourth field, the offset is 0. So we're getting a field that can be used 4 times more often than a grass field for virtually the same price.
It's a no-brainer.
It's my understanding, reading this, that what you're asking for this evening is authority to bring back to us the actual construction bids.
That's correct.
Okay. With that understanding, is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Member Pavlich moves. Do we have a second?
Go ahead.
Vice President Boyle seconds that motion. Call that vote.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Bill White.
Aye, that motion carries. So bring us back some bids. Okay. 9A, old business. This is second reading. Policy 2.120, board member development. Any members of the board have any questions about this?
Can I just make an
Absolutely.
overarching point, is that the majority of the changes that we're bringing to the board today are simply updates based on IASB policies.
Okay.
In the interest of time, with the indulgence of the board, I would ask whether, excuse me, do we have to do these one at a time? Can we do an omnibus? What's,
It's fine with me.
Joanne, is there any
You know,
procedural reason we
I
can't?
really don't know.
Okay, well, we'll do, we'll see what happens.
I
On-
don't think they do, Bill. So,
Okay, that's fine, we'll go ahead then. Okay, for 9A, since I'm on the policy commission, I will make the motion that we approve policy 2120. I believe in this body, I'm allowed to do that. Nancy, you want a
I
second?
will second it.
Okay, any discussion on policy 2.120? Once, going twice, can we call that vote?
Bill White.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. We move to 9B, policy 2.200. Once again, I will move that we approve at second reading this particular policy. Ms. Kupka?
Second?
Ms. Kupka seconds. Any discussion? Any questions? Going once, going twice? Let's call that vote, please.
Bill White.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. We move to item 9C. This is a second reading on communication with technology policy 5.125. Once again, I will move that policy 5.125 be approved.
I will second.
Member Kupka seconds. Discussion? This is kind of an interesting one, but I think we all know what we're doing, but it is a very interesting policy.
Well, this was another one that was IASB
Right.
recommendation, and I know it's probably, as technology just gallops along, we'll probably have to change it frequently, right? Or future boards will have to take a look at it.
Percent will have telepathy policy, but this is, okay, so now with that one, I'd ask for a vote. Call the vote on 5.125.
Bill White.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka. Aye. Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Okay, that policy has been approved. 9D, policy 6.50, school wellness. Once again, I will move that policy 6.50 be approved.
Second?
Member Kupka seconds. Any questions or discussion?
Go for it.
Okay, let's call that vote, please.
Bill White.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Okay, we move to 9E, policy 6110. I know this is scintillating television at home, I'm sure it is. Okay, policy 6.110, students at risk of academic failure. Once again, I move that policy 6.110 be approved. Here a second?
Second?
Member Kupka seconds that. Any discussion? Okay, call that vote, please.
Bill White.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Once again, that motion carries. 9F, policy 7.15, student and family privacy rights. Once again, I move that policy 7.15 be approved.
Second.
Actually, I think that's out of order since
Yes.
Ms. Kupka's on the policy committee.
I was just trying to make things a little more lively.
We will allow, we will
See
indulge
who's
you.
paying attention. You mentioned the TV audience at home. I just thought, you know.
There's no meat
No,
on
I'm
it.
confused.
We have a motion and a second.
Nancy's gonna second
Any
it.
any discussion? Call that vote, please.
Bill White.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. 9G, second reading on 7.50, school admissions and student transfers. Once again, I move that policy 7.50 be approved.
Second?
Member Kupka seconds. Any discussion? Call that vote, please.
Bill White.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
That policy has been approved, that motion carries. 9H, policy 7.70, attendance and truancy. Once again, I move that policy 7.70, attendance and truancy, be approved.
Second?
Member Kupka seconds. Call that vote, please.
Bill White.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
That motion carries. That policy has been approved. 7.100, health, ear, eye, and dental exams. Once again, I move that that policy be approved.
Second?
Member Kupka seconds. Call that vote, please.
Bill White.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries, and that policy has been approved. Finally, under 9J, 7.340. Yes, we have been, student records. Once again, I move that policy 7.340, student records, be approved.
Second?
Member Kupka seconds. Call that vote, please.
Bill White.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Okay, that motion carries. So we've just approved a bunch of policies. Ms. Kupka and I have been doing wonderful work. Now we move to section 10A, first reading. I have to remind myself what these are. First reading.
Workplace harassment,
Yes.
harassment of students.
Residents?
As always, this is for first reading. There will be no vote this evening. Again, since we've had, it's warm in this room, it's been a long time. If anybody wants us to discuss any of these specifically, please let us know right now. We'll be more than happy to do so. But we've had a chance to read them. If you want us to go through them one by one, we can. Otherwise, be sure to contact Ms. Kupka, myself, Dr. McDonald, with any questions or concerns at our next upcoming policy meeting before we come back for the final vote on these.
I just had a when is quick. that?
Sure.
When is that?
Actually, I don't remember, but I think it's first week of April, after spring
April
break.
5th?
Yes.
Okay,
The week after spring break.
okay. Just so we have a goal.
A timeline, right. I think it's the week after spring break.
I just had a quick question regarding the bullying policy. Once again, this is really as a result of IASB recommendations
Yes.
to make these changes. And did anything come out of state law that required them, or is it just, do we know? I know they've been talking about it in Springfield.
I believe there's state statutes that we have to comply with. and-
Right.
And the Lenda, and the updates that we receive indicate when there's been changes in the statute. And we can check with the service.
Okay. But basically, it's IASB recommendations.
Yes.
Right. Well, as you know, we have citations,
Right.
and I don't know that we
I just wondered if any of them
necessarily
were
go
new.
by there's any law that sort of the watershed for making the change, but it's a sort of the compilation and the interpretation.
It's a long policy. Thank you.
Okay, let's see, what is it that we're looking to delete? The next item on our agenda is 10B, the recommendation to delete 7.40, and I believe this was in some respects duplicative,
Seemed like it was in the wrong place, is what you were saying.
It's under students.
It was under students, but it was talking about prohibited gifts for board members.
and that we have a similar prohibition
Yeah.
in the other section. This is a first reading only. Do enough board members feel, actually, I will move that we delete 7.40 for the reasons described in the memorandum of other information.
Second?
Member Kupka seconds. Any discussion? Call that vote, please.
Bill White.
Aye.
Nancy Kupka.
Aye.
Terry Pavasich.
Aye.
Julia Beckman.
Aye.
Deb Boyle.
Aye.
Mike Davenport.
Aye.
Okay, policy 7.40, that's been deleted. Item 11, on our second reception of visitors, I still don't see anybody I don't recognize. Going once, going twice. Okay, we will close the second reception of visitors. Communications and announcements. Fortunately, Mr. Mattoon was unable to be here tonight. Dr. McDonald, do you have anything to report on LEND?
Only that on Thursday night of this week, there is a LEND dinner at Fenton High School, and the topic of the program associated with the dinner is public pensions, and I understand the speaker for the program is from the Chicago Civic Association. In addition, however, there will be persons from, I believe, IEA, TRS, and others associated with the public pension debate in this state, and my sense it's going to be a very instructive program on Thursday night.
I did forget to reserve for that. Is it still possible to do so? Do we know?
I can send a note to Jen.
I'll
said
send an
you
email
weren't
tomorrow.
going to.
I'll send you, or later tonight.
I think I'm reserved.
I meant to
think.
reserve, I forgot.
So carpooling would be great.
Okay, we'll talk about that. Okay.
I thought Bill and Debbie were here. Oh, no.
Oh, really?
I've got the list of work. I know
Okay.
Keith and Debbie both said they could not make it. Right,
Okay.
Deb?
Okay.
Bill, you may have told me you were going.
I think I told you,
I
but you
have
said
the
it was at the
list.
meeting, so. Yeah. Okay, Sassad?
We are meeting Wednesday night, so I don't have a whole lot to report. I will after we meet.
Foundation?
After much discussion, we have decided upon an event that we're going to host as a foundation. We're going to have alumni gatherings after both homecomings and this fall. And we have reserved the Moose Lodge so that they can partake of alcoholic beverages if that is their choice. And it will be a nice time to get together and talk, let alumni meet each other again and talk and have a good time. And we hope to have tents at each one of the homecoming games to let the alumni know about that. And so that should be a good time, and we're inviting faculty, retired and current, to come and talk with the alumni and just have a good time. Just kick back and relax. So that's what we're going to be doing.
Congratulations.
Yeah, after how many months
Many months.
of discussion.
Great.
So, anyway, that's what's going
Terrific,
on.
thank you for that report. For upcoming meetings, on April 9th, we have our special meeting workshop at 7 PM. On April 16th, our regular business meeting. And then April 14th will be Bagels with the Board at the Wooders Library. Do I ask for volunteers now? Anybody? Anthony Kupka? We'll find you one more, maybe. If no one else comes, I'll come, but we'll see if we can find somebody else.
I'll volunteer. I can do it.
Okay,
Unless you'd rather, Bill.
okay. We can talk about it between now and then.
You can find amongst yourselves.
But we can't all go. That's the only thing. We can't all go. And there is time, we do have a meeting in between.
In
too,
between,
So we can
right.
finalize that. With that, we move to item 14, and I have fond memories of being at the IASB. Go ahead.
I have one thing. Maybe on the April 9th, we still have not set a date for our board self-evaluation, and June is going to be upon us quicker than we think. And I really think that maybe if Bill or Dr. McDonald can get with Dr. Attia and get some dates so that we can put this on the calendar.
Okay, we'll talk to Dr. McDonald
I
about
would
that.
support that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else anybody wishes to discuss before I invite a motion to adjourn? We'll say one of the things I very, very vividly remember from the last IAS, from the fall convention, was that a motion to adjourn is always in order.
That's right.
Anybody wish to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Member, okay.
I didn't hear.
Member Kupka moves, Member Beckman seconds. Call that vote, please.
The voice.
It's a voice.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nobody. Okay, meeting adjourned.